Welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. On today's video, we will be reviewing the Pagani Design PD1690. I unboxed this watch along with the GMT BB58 homage, and now it's time to do the full review on it. Now, this is the premium edition line of watches. Now, the watch in question I have today is, of course, a homage of a very popular watch. And I think for the most part, the watch looks really nice. It's a very clean design. They do come in three different colors. You've got a silver dial, a blue dial, and the black dial, which I have with me. And I'd say the silver dial looks probably the best. Now, this watch will set you back around £90 depending on which store you get it from, which is roughly around $130, $140. I'll put the exact price in the bottom left hand corner. I'll also link the watch within the description to the AliExpress store. The links, of course, are affiliated, so please check out the store if you choose to buy this watch. As you can see, the contents of the box are the same as the contents that you get in the smaller boxes. With regards to the watch, like I said, I was quite impressed in the unboxing. I think it is, as I said, a clean design, and it looks quite understated, and I am a fan of how they've done it. I do see them slightly improving from the previous watches. They do have a few subtle changes to the finishing, and overall I think it looks just marginally better than the previous stuff. Nothing which shouts premium at all. So that being said, let's start off with the review. First and foremost, let's give you a wrist shot. I am wearing the San Martin 37mm Explorer homage. Let's get going. Let's start off with specifications, dimensions, as I usually do, and then we look a lot closer at the remaining features of the watch. So let's go ahead. Let's look at dimensions. So the case diameter, it is marketed as a 39mm watch, but it's closer to a 40mm. Exact dimensions are 39.8mm across the case. Now you also have a thickness of 11.5mm. Overall, not a bad thickness at all, and a lug to lug of 49mm. Slightly long, but it does suit the overall proportions of the watch. You do also have a 20mm lug width. The overall weight of the watch is 150 grams, and I've taken out some links, so this is sitting at around 130. Now, specifications wise, your usual specifications, you've got a stainless steel case. You do have a sapphire crystal with clear AR coating. The watch does run a Seiko Epson NH35 movement. Now let me pause right there. Now these watches may well be the last watches that use the NH35 due to the Malaysia factory being shut down because of COVID. As a result, a lot of these micro brands and AliExpress brands have had to source alternative movements. Now San Martin has already sourced a different one, which is basically an Orient version of the NH35, but Pagani Design on some of the latest models, so I think that they've done a Omega homage, a vintage Omega homage. They have gone back to using Miyota 8000 series movements. Now I don't know how you guys feel about that. I feel it is a bit of a downgrade. I think it is slightly putting me off as well. Having said that, the movement is still very reliable. Well, just to let you guys know on that movement point. Now you also have a upgraded 200 meters of water resistance, which is supported by a screw down crown and a screw down case back. So that's it for the specs, dimensions. Let's go ahead. Let's have a closer look at some of the features on this watch. So what you do get when it comes to the dial, you get this piano black glossy dial. Really good finish. I love that depth of that black. I mean, one of the criticisms I had with the San Martin is this grayed out faded dial, and as comparison, just looking at this piano black, it looks really nice. I do like how deep that color is. Now you do have applied features on this dial. You've got a mixture of triangular, baton and dual baton markers, of course in line with the watch that it is homaging. You also got printed text at the 12 and above the 6, and also below the twin batons at the 6 you got Japan movement written right there. Now on the right hand side you'll see the date window at 3 o'clock. Now what you will notice, the date window is beveled. I really do like that, although in the black it is slightly hard to tell, but that does give it a really nice finish. You've got a printed minute track that goes around the dial, and you've got the larger square markers over the hour markers. And all in all, I think this is a very nice and, as I said, understated dial to look at. Pagani are very consistent in the way they do design their dials. And moving over to the hands, you'll see these baton style hands, which are chamfered and they are fully polished, so you get some really nice reflective angles present on the dial. You've got a polished stick style second hand. and overall quite well done. QC issues, a few people have mentioned some, or one in particular when it comes to the dial, and I for one can see it as well. If you look at the markers at, let's say, the 5 o'clock, the 7 o'clock, the square dots on the minute track are not in line with the batons, so they are slightly off. And of course, with this being marketed as a premium edition, that's not something that you want. And that definitely, when it comes to watches, it does bug a lot of people. Is it a deal breaker? I don't think so, but it's definitely an undesirable. Let's go ahead and check out the Lume. Now, I do want the Lume to be better on this watch, but let's see how they actually have performed. Not as bright as I would like it, but considering the watch it is homaging, I'd say that's not bad. The Lume is evenly applied. There's no patchiness. It's probably one of the more better lumed watches that I have seen from Pagani, but again, it's just not that bright. But as a comparison, let me put the San Martin next to it. Now, I don't want to trigger the San Martin fans, but just have a look. It's actually not as bright. At least it's evenly spread though, and when we do give it a bit of a boost with the UV light, it does glow pretty bright. It lasts for not a long time, but you know, again, with the style of watch it is, and what you usually see, the Lume isn't amazingly well on these watches. So it's not totally disappointing, but definitely they need to look at improving the Lume across all the watches. Now, when it comes to the case, you'll find a very basic and simplistic finish. It is, of course, fully polished. You do have this curved bezel that is present on the watch, mirror finish, no QC issues apparent there, and you'll see the crystal just protrudes ever so slightly over the case. And moving on to the case, the lug tips are all fully polished, followed by the side of the case. And as I said, a very simplistic finish, as in only one type of finish present. The crown is a slim profile crown, decent machining. You do have Pagani Design logo present on the crown. The screw out function is okay. As you can see with gloves, I've managed to screw out with no issues. Pulls out just fine, allowing you to change the date, and once more allowing you to change the time. Smooth on the screwing as well, so really good crown action, very decent threading present. And just take a closer look at some of that finishing on that case. Now, the case tips are not sharp at all. The finishing is really well done. The whole machining of the case is actually really pleasant, very smooth. As I mentioned, no rippling on the polishing. It's been polished to a really high level. Now let's turn our attention to the case back. Now the case back on this watch is slightly different. Usually Pagani Design do give us those see-through case backs, but because they've upgraded this to 200 meters, you do find a solid case back, as well as a slightly different design. So they've gone for what looks like an image of some mountains. However, I could be wrong, but then you've got the Pagani Design logo, kind of ties in with the design. So you've got a mountain range with some snowy tops, and you've got the Pagani Design logo with a north, east, south and west compass markings, and you've got two pickaxes. I gotta say, I actually really like that, because I think for once a watch brand from AliExpress has kept the case back relevant to the actual theme of the watch. As we know, it is a Explorer homage, so that ties in really well. You've got your standard specifications across there, few different types of finishing. As you can see in the center, you've got this sandblasted or bead blasted effect, as well as the background for the PD1690, the model number. And you've got engraved water resistance rating, the material, and of course the Pagani Design logo. So that is actually quite different than what they usually do. There is some thought that has gone into this, so that's quite pleasant to look at. Moving over to the bracelet. Now, as you can see, it is fully brushed. You've got linear brushing present across the whole bracelet. There is a slight taper to it as well, and the taper is from around 20 millimeters down to, I'd say, about 16 mil. You do have polished sides, and what you'll notice is that you can't see the ends of the screws. So that is really well finished again. Well, there's no screws on this side, but you will see screws on the other side, and you'll notice you don't see the holes. So good finish. 3-link bracelet, solid end links, good fit and finish. That does fit quite snugly between the lugs. Pagani design across the clasp, a flip lock style clasp, milled center, positive engagement, and fully brushed. Opens really well. Now, in terms of micro adjust, they have some pretty useless micro adjust here. If I can get the camera to show you this, you do have a couple of positions available. I can see 3. Now, this has already been set on the last one, but I don't know how you would get in there. It would be definitely really awkward. As you can see, the dimples there on the inside of the clasp, and you're meant to adjust it. It is pretty much useless, to be honest. Like I said, I don't know how you would manage that. It doesn't have any on the fly adjustment, which is something they can look into for the next watch, definitely. But I will say the bracelet is actually really nicely done. The edges have been rounded off slightly, so you don't feel an edgy bracelet. And also the brushing is very fine indeed. Now, if I give you guys a comparison against the San Martin, you can actually see how close this Pagani is. I would say it's almost identical, if not absolutely identical. So really good brushing. I'd say overall I am quite pleased with this watch. Let's put this on wrist. So here we have the Pagani 1690 on my 6.5 inch wrist. Took out a few screw links in order to size up for my bracelet. The screw links are actually well done as well. The screws are fine. I didn't have no issue, no catching of the threads. So, you know, really pleasing to see these smaller, finer little details that have been addressed. And you can actually feel quality on different aspects of this watch. So just take a look there. Pretty comfortable. And I think the proportions are okay. Of course, there will be people that always prefer something slightly smaller, but I do like, you know, how black that dial is. I love the finish on there and the applied markers. Now you got the San Martin in hand as well. Really, you know, not much difference in the sense that at arm's length, they both look pretty decent. The Pagani doesn't look as cheap as it is, definitely not, and I don't think it's far off actually the San Martin in terms of overall presence and quality. Of course, this does have the PT5000, and there's a few other differences in this watch, just slightly better finishing on the case, etc. However, like I said, the Pagani design in my eyes is not far behind at all. And I like the change in this curved bezel, polished, gives it a just more of a well-rounded look. And as I stated in the start of the review, does look quite understated, and I'd say this is probably one of the better watches. You know, you do sometimes get Pagani design watches that end up looking slightly tacky, or you know, they just look a bit off, but I'd say this is probably one of the watches which definitely does not look tacky. It looks actually quite classy. It looks really well built. I'm not so disappointed with the Lume as I thought I would be. I think the Lume is still pretty decent, although it's not the brightest. But again, arguably, you don't need super bright Lume on this style of watch. So overall, a very decent attempt. So for £80, you're looking at $110. I'd say this is a really good purchase from Pagani Design. I just hope they continue to improve. And the main thing I do want to see is bezels and Lume. That's something they need to improve on. And everything else for the price range. Honestly, it's very difficult to criticize and complain about this watch. So hope you guys enjoyed that review. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.